In this third installment of your lab orientation, we will follow two students through a day at the lab. Dr. Alpha is a terrific student. He understands that even before you come to the lab, there are many things you need to do, so let's get busy. He'll first need to log on to the physics lab website and schedule his reservation time for his experiment. Here he can also read the handout for his lab and check for any additional pictures or videos to watch that may help him through the lab. He finds both and is very excited. These will ease and enrich his whole lab experience. He will also need a printed copy of his lab handout. If his teacher requires a pre-lab to be completed before the lab, now is the time to do it. After that, he gathers the necessary equipment for his lab. He needs his book, notebook, calculator, ruler, pen, pencil, and anything else he feels would be useful. Now it's time for his lab. He gives his lab mates a call, but unfortunately, it looks as though they have cancelled, and he will have to go alone. Eager to get inside, he attempts the outside door, but realizes the actual door is located inside. Still on time, he makes his way to the front office and signs in. Dr. Beta is not such a great student. He shows up more than 15 minutes late for his lab, and since his spot has been given away, he'll have to sign on to another standby sheet. Now Dr. Alpha will consult a lab instructor. He tells her which lab he is there to do and what time he has reserved. Also, he hands in his pre-lab, knowing that he cannot once the lab has begun. With the pre-lab analyzed and approved, he is now given any equipment needed for his lab, instructed where to go, and given an introduction to the lab. He makes his way over to the lab area and logs onto the computer with the password and username assigned for that semester. In the lower right-hand corner of the screen, he finds an icon called Physics Experiments. He clicks this and opens his lab program. He rereads his lab handout and takes all initial measurements first. He is careful about his measurements. He locates the appropriate scale for the object's size and mass and records its mass out to the greatest possible digit. This is done to ensure accuracy and prevent having to do something twice. If he is uncertain about something, he knows he can ask a lab instructor, but I think he got it. Dr. Alpha proceeds to perform his experiment as the handout instructs. He will carefully and systematically collect his data, writing down all digits on the screen. Meanwhile, Dr. Beta hasn't bothered to read the handout and can't make sense of the experiment at all. He is not very careful when performing the experiment either and injures himself repeatedly. Dr. Beta eats and drinks in the lab room instead of the back student room and ruins equipment. When he takes his measurements, he uses the wrong scale and is not very careful, leading him to poor results and having to recollect measurements. He gets a phone call and leaves the lab for the day without giving his lab to the instructors. This means that he will have to start from scratch when he returns. He doesn't write down enough digits, and his values don't make any sense. Frustrated after a lab instructor asks him to redo his values, he uses data from another semester and copies it down. However, this won't work because experiments are changed regularly. It looks like he'll be here for a long time. Meanwhile, Dr. Alpha is hard at work. Once this data has been collected, he can now analyze it. Lab instructors can help you along, but cannot tell you everything. There are larger desks and more space located in the back room, so he sets up there. Here he can use any of the textbooks on the back wall to help him. Having done his pre-lab and read through the handout as well as his textbook, he knows what to look for as he performs his calculations. He is also very careful to assign values with their appropriate units. Feeling confident about his work, he goes to the lab instructor. They look over his work, take a look at any plots he has done on his computer, and may instruct him to redo or check something more carefully. And he doesn't even mind. If he has everything correct, the lab instructor can stamp and sign him out, but only after he has given back any borrowed equipment. He cleans up his lab area and makes sure he has saved and emailed himself plots, or put them on a flash drive so he can incorporate them into his lab report at home. You can only save files in the physics temp storage folder located on the lower right-hand side of the screen. He then signs himself out. If he had been unable to finish his lab within the given time, he can give the data he has collected to a lab instructor, and they can file it for him until he can come back. He should never leave without consulting a lab instructor first. He checks to see what lab is next. He wants to schedule early to ensure a successful lab experience. It looks as though Dr. Beta has given up on his lab. When he finally does leave, he goes out the door with the alarm. Maybe he'll return next semester and learn to be more like Dr. Alpha.